Hi, I'm Laura Kelly of POCCA Cape Cod, and today we are in Harwich at the Board of Selectmen's meeting at the Town Hall. What's going on is that we're on the agenda because NSTAR has sprayed herbicides along power lines, actually in 9 towns within a month's time because the weather was so good. And unfortunately, they sprayed on a windy day when it was 15-mile-an-hour winds. And a lady, a town resident of Harwich, has property that abuts the power lines. Her name is Claire Berg. She was unintendedly sprayed. And unfortunately, we've got to figure out what's going on with NSTAR spraying herbicides because they are unfortunately working in conditions that are not part of the regulations. So at this point, trying to figure out how to communicate that when a regulation is set, we've got to work within those regulations. We want to bring this to the rest of Cape Cod because they did just spray 9 towns. So this is a real, unfortunate situation that we've been working with NSTAR for the last 5 years, educating them that we do not want to have herbicides for vegetation management on our power lines, yet they still go forward. The YOP, the Yearly Operational Plan, will be given to MDAR, the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, guesstimating between Thanksgiving and Christmas. There's a 45-day comment period where we really need to continue to comment, stating facts why we don't want this to happen above an aquifer. This is a really big deal. This is our environments. These are our natural resources. Once they're potentially harmed, we've all got to live with it. In a situation where NSTAR can go back to mowing, this gets me to say, why not? So thank you for watching, and listen to everybody else that'll be speaking today.
Before I even saw what was going on, I smelled this horrific toxic smell. And probably about 5 minutes later, 8 men abreast walking down the power lines, blowing chemicals out of their backpack blowers.
So to explain about the blowers really quickly, that actually they have 2 different types on the regulation that MDAR allows. One is called a sprayer, and they discuss that they're going to be spraying. But there's also a blower that's allowed. Like you said, it's a 4-inch wide mouth backpack sprayer. Well, the backpack sprayer is just like, as you would know, a leaf blower. It's gasoline powered, and they have a 2 to 3 gallon combination of 2 different types of herbicides plus a petroleum-based surfactant. The surfactant just is like a glue. It sticks the herbicides to the intended vegetation, and they are to only target particular vegetation. But in your area, was there woody trees like pines and oaks?
There were a few scrub pines, as I call them, but not too many in the left-hand side of my property. To the right-hand side, there was a few more. There were oaks, but my neighbor had cut them down to about 2.5 feet tall. So, and they were pretty much along his side of the property line. There wasn't too much over on mine.
And the rest was?
And the rest was native grasses. There was little blue stem, big blue stem. There was bearberry. There was low bush cranberry. There was low bush blueberries. So all of those aren't going to come back because those are woodies, except for the grasses.
So per order of the YOP, the Yearly Operational Plan, NSTAR's applicators are not to apply herbicides on anything except the intended vegetation, which is in their invasives list, which does not include any grasses. So to hear you say that there was 8 abreast of them going through this, I call it a field more than a woods, situation, that in and of itself is potential violation of their unfortunately. So you said you smelled it. That piques my interest. I can't imagine what the smell would be. And
Well,
then it went.
Yeah, I mean, if they were spot spraying or target spraying certain woodies, that would have been fine. But if I'm smelling this before I even see them, the chemicals have to be blowing through the wind. I mean, I'm not going to smell
Could you
it.
see it?
I could see it once they got up to in front of the farm. I could see the fog of chemicals coming out of the hose and then drifting.
You know, it's sideways
Sideways, yeah.
more than down.
Yeah, they were spraying straight out like this. They weren't pointing at a woody and spraying it. They were this is what they were doing, back and forth, and they were going in unison down the power lines. And it was just horrible. It was just absolutely horrible.
This is going on in 9 towns throughout the Cape, so it's happening in your own backyard. Keep your eyes open. It's done for this year, 2014, but at this point we're unable to stop this insanity above an aquifer. So stay tuned and with your own health departments, your own town health departments, to see when they'll be spraying next year in 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After the meeting in October in which it was brought up to the board's attention, a resident from Seahorse Farm had an incident. We had followed up. We did call MDAR. I was able to identify the person conducting the investigation and wanted to make sure that officially that something had been on file and that they were officially investigating it. The resident and the interested parties did submit something with the governor's office. It was sent to MDAR, and MDAR is actively investigating it. Today, we did talk to a few folks. I actually spoke with the manager of community relations at NSTAR that basically told me what you just reported and had a conversation with him. He did make a commitment that once the investigation comes out from MDAR that they would come out. They welcome the opportunity to come out to talk about the obviously the incident and the findings out of that. We also did put in a call to the representative from MDAR, and my secretary was able to speak with him, and he kind of indicated today that they are reaching the final stages of the investigation. So it is something that is on their list and is something that they are definitely working towards. And I do wish just to thank publicly just Senator Wolf and Representative Peake, because not always do we get a good response from state agencies, and I know that we relied upon their offices to assist us in getting those answers. And there's no doubt in my mind that it was due to their efforts that we were able to achieve that. So I do hope to have some information back from those parties to the board to get the other side. And as you've indicated, they were invited this evening, but due to other items, they have not been able to attend.
And Sarah, Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
It was an enjoyable experience. There was no notice of this happening. We had no notification from anyone about spraying happening. We have a right to say no to being exposed to toxic chemicals. We have a right to say no to keeping our bodies and our animals and our farms out of harm's way. And we were not given that right. That choice was taken away from us. And I really, really feel that my body was put under an assault against my will, being exposed to poison. And that's just not right. We have the right to say no. And our choice to say no was taken away from us. My concern is what's going to happen to me in the future. Am I going to develop cancer from being exposed to these chemicals? Because my body reacted within 2 hours of being sprayed. I developed a rash on my torso, and then it spread to my arms, and then it spread to my legs. This is the front of my torso, my front of my body, my arms, my legs, developed a rash like this. Unfortunately, my back was a lot worse. The picture is kind of hard to see. It's a little blurry, but this is what my back looked like. It was a massive spread of rash. It was like a big, huge blotch of rash on my back. Okay? This is what I saw. This was the men out on the power lines. Okay? They stopped spraying at this point because my neighbor came out to talk to them, asking them what the heck they were doing. I got a better word for it, but I won't say it on public television here. They didn't know what was happening either. And what my neighbors, I don't think much of anything was taller than that. They were spraying chemicals abutting my property line. They can't spray within 100 feet of any person. They were 40 feet from me and 40 feet from one of my boarders that was on the property that day. My well is within 50 feet of where they were spraying. And I have water hydrants in the lower barn that were within 50 feet of where they were spraying. No one was supervising N-Star in their spraying. There was an ATV traveling back and forth with the chemical packs to swap them out for new ones. There was supposed to be somebody there with a GPS showing people where there were dry creeks and other natural resources they weren't supposed to be spraying. Paid no attention. They kept going right down the power lines. No one was supervising the spraying, period. Nobody from N-Star was there to supervise the spraying. Someone should have been walking with those people, showing them what they could spray and what they couldn't. Nothing was done. As a result, per Chapter 132B, N-Star can be fined $25,000 per applicator per violation per day. And since they were in violation of the yearly operational plan, this should be taking effect pretty soon. MDAR is supposed to be enforcing N-Star's yearly operational plan, but it appears that MDAR has no oversight, and they are not regulating what N-Star does with the spraying, period. I walked up to them and I said, I need to know what you're spraying. I said, you're on my property line, which you're not supposed to be. My horses are right there, you've sprayed them, I need to know what you have sprayed. He says, well, it won't hurt your horses, it's none of your business, you don't need to know that. And he turned around and walked back to his little ATV.
Okay.
We do have the right to know.
No, I understand that. I get that. I'm just trying to get to a few items here. You said someone from the state came to your farm and took some swabs. Is that someone from what agency? Do you know? Did they identify themselves?
DEP.
DEP.
Yep.
Okay. And we had communication with the Department of Agriculture?
We have that.
And I did ask specifically for them to come out and investigate it directly. So I made that request on behalf of the town.
Okay, but as far as, at least the little bit I heard, the Department of Agriculture are the ones that are investigating this, is that right? Did they talk to you?
I've not spoken to me.
How do you do an investigation if you don't
Yeah,
talk
that's
to
what
the
I'd like to
person that was sprayed? I'm just trying to put the pieces together.
It would be nice. It would be nice for them to come out, but we have not heard from them or seen them or anything else. This one person from the DEP came out, and he did take the swabs. He drove them up to Amherst last Friday himself. He put a rush on the lab results, and he was going to notify me when he had the results.
And that's the question we need to follow up on. It's not clear to me whether MDAR would ask, coordinate the investigation to DEP because they have the.
I don't think they would, because I wrote a letter to the governor, and this guy responded to that letter, and he called me and said, I'd like to come out.
Okay. I mean, I think it might be appropriate, we ask our legislatures what they think about this whole thing, quite frankly. I mean.
Yeah, that's what I told you.
Any comments? Mr. Wolf or Senator Wolf?
Sure. I think both of us, if you want us to hear, if you want to hear from both of us, I'd love to talk.
Great, thank you for recognizing us. We're both Senator Wolf and I, okay, right? are glad to be here this evening. And you know, one of the things that we can do is facilitate the conduit of information to the board as well as to the homeowner. You know, this issue of DEP versus MDR. I will tell you that my office and Senator Wolf's office were both in communication with MDR today, asking them to be here, and we're told that they would not be able to be here, but also asking them where the report was. Your chairman and I spoke this morning at about 8 a.m., and his ask of me was to see if we can get the report and when it will be forthcoming. The legislative liaison, Dan Burgess, emailed and said we should have the investigation report, because you initiated a request for that by the end of the week, was the answer. Now, is DEP contracted by MDR to do the chemical testing? Perhaps. I know that DEP has a sophisticated lab operation. I'm not sure what the operation of, you know, what the lab facilities are that MDR has. In hearing this tonight, one of the things that we, as a delegation, and it's not just Dan and myself, but this is a delegation issue from, you know, on both sides of the aisle, from the canal all the way out to Provincetown, as we've met with representatives from MDR, the administration, and NSTAR, is the lack of accountability, and here we have it. You know, we've asked the question till we're blue in the face, who is monitoring these so-called licensed applicators to make sure that they're doing what their permit says that they're supposed to do? And we're told, well, that's the, you know, what their license is. Of course, they're going to follow what the licensing requirement is. They're all trained and all of that. Clearly here, there is a lack of accountability, and certainly one of the recommendations moving forward will reiterate our recommendation of the past, and that is that there be observers there. And quite honestly, you know, in the fishing industry, the observers are industry paid for. Well, especially with NSTAR proposing to raise our rates by some 29%, it strikes me as appropriate that the industry, i.e. NSTAR, pay to have an observer walk, you know, an observer who's not their employee, but an observer who works for the state, to walk those power lines with these applicators to make sure they're doing it according to their permit. I think we've seen a failure of a number of things happen here in Harwich. And
Do you have any, who enforces this? Do they point to any instance where they've enforced the regulations? Because this seems to be a clear violation of their agreement.
Well, MDR is the enforcing agency, and that's why they are the ones who will be responding to your
Have they actually
incident
enforced
report
something
as well.
anywhere else?
Pardon me?
Have they actually enforced something anywhere else? I guess that's.
I don't know the
my
answer to,
question.
I don't know the answer to that question. This is the first time since the spraying began, and you know, this has been an ongoing conversation is too mild a word to describe it. It's been an ongoing issue for what, 5 years, 6 years we've been fighting them on this, and it's just this year that the spraying has begun. And we've seen issues in Sandwich, we've seen issues here in Harwich. I would say the rollout of it is not going smoothly. Senator, do you want to discuss the letter that we sent to the governor and what the response that you got from the administration was?
Yeah, and thank you all for your service. This is a tough job and this is a tough issue. We met with this, our office met with the secretary last week and asked not only that there be more of a accountability relative to monitoring and reporting, but we even went beyond that, because I think there's such a credibility issue at this point relative to whether our state agencies are doing their jobs, that I would like to see the Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the citizens of Harwich, and just as background, I live very close to Seahorse Farm. I've lived in the same house in North Harwich now for 28 years. All of my daughters actually took riding lessons at Seahorse Farm, so I'm very familiar with the property and with the neighborhood. I think now it is time for the Board of Selectmen to respectfully ask the Commonwealth to ask a much higher level of accountability out of the utility. And in this case, I think that the utility should be required to discuss with each town alternative methods, because I don't think there's going to be credibility. I think we could get the state to guarantee till the cows come home that they're going to monitor, that they're going to hold accountable, that they're going to do enforcement actions. And I'm an elected official who supposedly represents the Commonwealth and our community, and I don't even believe that that's going to happen. And my belief is that at this point, we should be asking as a community that the utility be forced to come and discuss alternative methods, including a budget, and give the town the option to ask the community if it wants to rally around using alternative methods in our neighborhoods, in our backyards. I actually think it's outrageous. Sarah and I went to their headquarters, what was it, about a year ago or less? And we actually asked to go up and speak with representatives from NSTAR. They wouldn't even come down and talk to us. When we deregulated the utility industry back in 1998, I think we assumed there was going to be a level of accountability with our utilities in issues like this, in issues like 29% rate increases all across the board. So I would not only like to see in this specific case the Board of Selectmen ask for accountability, ask to be part of the process. What does DEP find when they do their analysis? But even beyond that, I would like to ask the Board of Selectmen to ask DAR and the Commonwealth to require the utility to come to meetings like this and discuss with every community in my district, but specifically as it relates to tonight, what alternative methods in collaboration with the community could be used on the easements and through people's backyards and on property that's owned by NSTAR, so that the towns could participate and the citizens could participate in stopping what they have unanimously said they don't want happening in their communities. I just find it outrageous. They're not even willing to talk to us. And again, I don't even, again, I got elected thinking, well, this is going to be an opportunity to stand with citizens and make these kinds of comments and make these kinds of requests. It's outrageous at this point that we can't even talk to NSTAR. We can't even get a hearing. They won't even come down and meet with us from up on the top floor or wherever they were. So you guys do have the ability to go beyond just let's follow through on this one incident, but to use this incident as an example of why we should have more accountability and more collaborative effort with utilities. So that's what I'd like to see. In addition to a follow-up from this one incident, it's clear, unless you want to call the citizens of this town dishonest or lying tonight, it's clear that what they experienced was a direct violation of what MDR approved relative to NSTAR using these herbicides and pesticides. And therefore, there should immediately be a moratorium until, as Sarah said, and she's absolutely right, if we can do it in the fishing industry, we can damn well do it under our own power lines in our own backyards. They should have a monitor there, and they should be required to have a monitor when they're applying it. If they're going to do a cost alternative or a cost analysis of doing mechanical or other methods versus chemical, part of that chemical should include appropriate monitoring and appropriate oversight and appropriate enforcement relative to them doing it the way they're supposed to be doing it, which clearly they're not. So, I encourage you all to have a nice discussion about that, but I'd actually like to see you ask for a higher level of accountability and some alternatives that the community can get behind. I think you'd have a lot of volunteers in the room here if we got NSTAR to agree to alternative methods, to volunteer their time and come together as a community and really solve this problem in ways that are consistent with how we want to see our land and our single source aquifer be managed. So I know we'd have a lot of us out there with clippers and with mowers and doing the right thing out there. So if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. But Sarah and I certainly stand in, I think, in unity on this issue.
Absolutely. And I think Dan brings up a very good point about local control. I look at a lot of things through the lens of local control and not wanting to take action at the state level that strips it away. And I think this is an opportunity to embrace more local control. In my office and in conjunction with the Senator's office, we're kicking around some legislation to file next session, which would be in early January. We have the idea, we don't have the specific wording of the language, but what it's a kind of an outcropping of is over and over and over again, we have said to NSTAR, use Cape Cod, use Barnstable County as a pilot program. Distinguish us from the rest of the state, if you feel you must, because of our sole source aquifer issue. Well, what this bill would seek to do is distinguish us as a sole source aquifer and carve out of the regulations an exception that would, in effect, make us a model where communities where the source of their water is from a sole source aquifer would have greater say and, in effect, veto authority over whether spraying can happen, who does it, who monitors it, whether it's hand cutting and that type of thing. So while we're outraged, I mean, it's galling, and the arrogance of the applicators is also quite galling in my mind. While we're outraged over this, we are looking forward into the future, not only to address this issue, but to stop this from happening in the future. Interestingly, just today, Governor-elect Baker announced who the new Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs will be. His name is Matt Beaton. He's a state rep, and I've served with him for 2 terms now. I know him well. We've worked together on some fisheries issues as well as on hunting issues. Interestingly enough, he's a big sportsman and outdoorsman. You know, I think it's good that I have a working relationship with him, and first and foremost in my mind is once the transition team gets up and running, once he settles in, I think it's important for him to come down here on the Cape, because MDAR sits under the Secretary of EO, Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, for him to meet with us to understand what we're going through. And I think we have the opportunity for greater oversight over these state agencies than we've had.
So the leverage we have is that going into the late winter and spring, there's something called the state budget. And I will tell you that I will make this an issue relative to advocating for anything in the budget for that department, unless they come down here and have a discussion with one of the towns who has been impacted by their action or inaction. So we will
have a discussion when they're not here.
Right, well,
We will ask.
Well, the parties involved aren't here, and NSTAR's not here, and NDAR's not here. Right.
Angela?
You should know that NSTAR avoids us like the plague. I mean, every time we try to move a pole or put a water fire hydrant in, it's grief.
Well, the solar facility.
And so, I mean, so we've had a lot of problems.
That based on testimony you've heard and observations you've made, you believe that there was a violation of the plan that was approved by MDAR, and you expect your state agency to enforce it to the letter of the law and to the maximum outcome, to hold the utility accountable, copy us, and I promise you, our offices who have been engaged in this will go right to the secretary and say, we want to know in writing exactly what you're planning to do with this. And the other thing is, there are ways that the switch in administration hurts, but there actually are ways that their switch in administration can help us, because the incoming administration is going to want to demonstrate right out of the box that they're listening, that they're responsive, and that they're willing to act on our behalf, because this is their honeymoon period. I think we should also leverage that to make sure that the incoming administration is engaged right away on this issue.
Off track here, but you make an interesting comment. I think one of our big complaints on almost any issue you look at from the state is they love one size fits all.
Right.
Whether it's MassDOT, whether it's this and that, and to break out of that in any of these factions would be a great benefit.
I wish I could describe to you the number of hours I spend in any given week fighting a one-size-fits-all mentality and saying, hey, guess what, guys, it doesn't fit us down here.
Right. So that's a problem.
Well, the other thing is that half the time you hear from the state level that they believe in local control, and the town's ability to have local option. And then a case like this comes up. We haven't even discussed what the differential in price is to do this the way we would like to do it in Harwich. But after that discussion happens, then there should be an opportunity, a public discussion about how it gets paid.
To the incident in Harwich, however, there are several others on the Cape that I would like to speak to, if you'll allow me. But first, I would like, my name is Sue Phelan. I live in West Barnstable. I'm the director of Green Cape. And we have several members here in Harwich who have asked me to attend here. I just want to mention that these incidents are not standalone incidents. There have been several other violations that have occurred in Barnstable, Brewster, Tisbury, and other towns. One was right up the street from where I live. There was a severe overspray in a Brewster homestead, which left a food crop inedible, and the area has been unproductive for several years now.
My name is Michelle Rossa. I'm a resident of Chatham, but my horse does reside at Seahorse Farm.
We'll forgive you for that.
We're regionalizing horse.
I'm a 19-year paramedic in the town of Weymouth, so I'm aware of chemicals, how to deal with chemicals and whatnot. The day I was at Seahorse was the day that they were spraying. witnessed them coming across. I was down at the lower barn with the.
You have no merit for rejecting this plan, for withdrawing this plan.
Did you see the comment?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but they don't.
It's been done on other, I'm gonna have Phil brought in, I mean, it's my property. They have every right to come through with their trucks if they want to, but I'm not putting a permanent structure in there. That's what my deed says, no permanent structures. I'm allowed to have a vegetable garden there, which I want to do. But they came through, cut it all out, I was like, great, now I can have a vegetable garden. Well, everything started growing back up. I went through and cut it all out, you know, ready to put all the fill in.
I'll take notes. I was planning on calling you like over last week. It's been so crazy.
Sure.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I don't like being asked to do something that I did 4 years ago. We've asked for them. I know. We asked for them not to approve it in the first place.
Exactly.
So if they had done what we asked for, they wouldn't have ever approved the plan, much less having to revoke it.
What do you think the chances of Charlie Baker
Let's see.
through for us?
Hey, the kid voted for him.
Yeah, that's right. I'll remind them of that.
That's right. You wanna keep us?
As far as, they wouldn't even discuss the aspect of the maintenance, but the spraying, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, the guys spraying are,
The stuff is one, this.
they're not the ones making the decision.
Right, exactly. It's a Joe Schmo that's out there making $12 an hour and he doesn't care.
For contractors.
So Dan, what did you learn tonight, and what are you gonna do after, going forward?
I didn't learn anything tonight, Laura,
Come on.
because this
You've been living it, yeah.
This isn't a learning experience, this is an opportunity to try to talk to our elected officials. To me, forgetting the chemical issue for a minute, it's purely a democratic issue, which is we've said we want our land treated a certain way, we should be able to have it treated that way. But guess what, I actually didn't learn that tonight, I knew that.
You knew that
I
a
knew
while
that
ago.
when I got elected. What's that?
Yeah.
So through into the aquifer, the town wells are no different than my private well, you're gonna drink it,
So
and we're bathing in
The
it.
question is whether they can do a regulatory change without being a legislative initiative.
Yeah, right.
And that's what we're talking to the department about, because if they can change the regulation without legislation, that would be the easiest way.
I just,
And the regulatory change should be that they'd be required, prior to a management plan being approved, to meet with the towns and give the towns an opportunity to suggest alternative methods. And the whole issue of payment has to be discussed too, because if the alternative methods are more expensive, there needs to be a dialogue about how we pay for it.
There's a lot of summer people.
but the town should come forward.
Two of my neighbors.
I need to talk to you on the way
to
out.
get
That's what Clay
permission to
was
cut the
asking
stuff
for.
on their property,
Help
and
from
they,
the town
Thank you.
they took
to
the
fight
notice,
this.
Yeah.
stuck
She didn't get an answer on that.
We'll,
Yeah, well, they're gonna
we'll
go
keep up the
forward.
fight. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Goodness.
Keep the notice, and they go, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, there it is in the bushes over here. That's super. You know what I mean? Keep in tap. I own a easement. No, I don't. Power line easement. They actually notified me that they were gonna spray.
So how did things go upstairs for you? What did you think the outcome was like, and do you think it was successful? What happened here today?
I think the teeming masses came out. It's a very long night, so people got to see paint dry during some of the meetings, and it was extremely.
Do you think that's good or bad?
I think it was good because after our enlightening conversation came, I think the selectmen, the ones that were present and the ones watching on television that couldn't be there, saw input from many, many people, and I was heightened by someone from the one of the committees, the finance committee, actually saying that there should be probably a line item so we can actually fund our town taking care of itself.
For vegetation management on
Yes,
the power lines?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
great.
So I think that they're actually thinking ahead that
Yeah,
way.
outside of the box,
So
that's great.
I think that's good. I said, but for me, I think we have to abolish the poisoning of our town, and one way of doing that is by getting the public involved and engaged, and not a me, but a we.
and not using herbicidal applications
Absolutely
along
not.
our rights of way as power lines.
Yes.
Thank you, John, for your
Thank you. Thanks for all you
support
do.
and input as always.
Thank
This is
you.
Jim McCulley from Orleans, who is an advisor on POCCA2 Cod, and he has been such a good, I'm going to use the word sidekick with me through the years, educating me and helping out all of us here on Cape Cod with this particular vegetation management issue. So how did you feel things went tonight at the Selectmen's meeting?
I thought it was great. I thought Claire did a wonderful job. She was very compelling, very personal. We've talked through all of this for the last couple of years, or you've done it for the last 6 years, I guess. And there's a lot of, that's a lot of great work, but Claire, I think Claire and the other folks accomplished, made a more compelling case in 1 hour than we've done. Certainly the selectmen heard them. Sarah and Dan were wonderful. They certainly sounds like they have plans to move forward. And it was, obviously it's sad that somebody had to be hurt that much, but it certainly makes it very real from worrying about the theory of what could happen to what actually happens. And I think it'll be, I'm very optimistic. Next step after we get through this, one point that NSTAR makes that's valid that we have to work on next is NSTAR says that they account for 1%. Well, we have to stop using pesticides on the homeowners. That's really the next challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is going to be the key to, introducing these same habits that we want NSTAR to do, install it in ourselves as homeowners and local business owners here on the Cape. So look forward to that in the near future. And yes, so thank you for joining POCCA2 Cod TV. And this has been an exciting evening. I hope that everybody gets involved because we all drink the water here. Thank you very much. Bingo.